I mean, it's a pretty complex, pretty expensive, pretty technical thing going on. But I think it's important that our listeners understand what it is. Go ahead and kind of dumb it down for us, if you will.
Well, it's similar to that curve system, that energy reserve system that's in the Formula One series right now, and unfortunately that's raised the cost there. So you have to think that it would raise the cost somewhat if IndyCar applies it, and I've heard IMSA being able to apply it possibly as well. But unlike IMSA, where most of the teams are supported directly by the manufacturer, IndyCar is not like that. And I just don't think it's going to be effective unless you could find a way to really slash the costs for the teams. I mean, even with the non-hybrids, I mean, you still have teams like Hoonkoos that are struggling for funding. Dreyer and Reinbold still is committed to Indy only. And if you're trying to bring in, new teams like Clausen Marshall and some of these other teams, Moto Gator, a few of these other teams as well, bringing in a system that's going to raise the cost significantly, I don't know if that's the way to keep them on board.
Yeah, absolutely. And, let me ask you this, and this is just a general question because I don't really know the answer, but it seems like NASCAR does their own thing. They I mean, maybe safety and some other things they copy and look at other racing series and what's working for them. But it seems like NASCAR is doing their own thing. But it seems like IndyCar, and I've felt this way for a long time, even going back to when it was separated to the kart season. It seems like they're the little brother, if you will, of Formula One, and they want to be like Formula One. I don't know that I'm a big – I know they're both open-wheel racing, but don't you think that Formula One tries – I mean, IndyCar tries to do what Formula One does? Go ahead.
And that's what partly led to the split. IndyCar – USAC saw the sport going in a direction closer to F1 with foreign drivers, et cetera, and higher costs that they did not want to go into. So that was the thing of the split. Now, I don't think we're going to see a split this time around because IndyCar is totally behind it. But I just don't know if some of these smaller car owners are going to be willing to back a situation like this where their costs, I mean, sponsorship's tough enough to find as it is. I don't know if the sponsors are going to be keen on spending even the extra dollars for these hybrid programs because that's where a majority of that money is going to be coming from, is sponsorship. And I don't know if the price tag, I mean, it's tough enough to get sponsors to run the full slate right now, but when that price tag goes up and they have to foot an extra bill, I don't know if they're going to be willing to, continually back that and support that. That's my biggest concern right now is bringing the sponsors that are not tied to the manufacturer and getting them on board to where they want to stick with this because the costs are going to go up on them as well.
More than half of the top 10 in standings with IndyCar have not had a win this season. Obviously, James Hinchcliffe, Will Power, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Graham Rahal, Felix Rogasvest, James Hinchcliffe, Sebastian Bourdais, although Bourdais 11, haven't had a win. The most wins of the drivers this year is Joseph Newgarden with Penske. I mean, I don't like to be that guy that prematurely crowns on anybody. It doesn't really matter who it is. But he's only had one pole. But he's had 4 wins, and you got Alexander Rossi with 2, Simon Pettijohn with 3, and Scott Dixon with 2, and Tomoko Soto with 1 in the top 10. Joseph Newgarden seems like at this point it's his to win or his to lose, either which way you look at it.
Well, that's a good way to put it, I would say, right now. But like I said, all it takes is one bad result, a last place finish here and there, and he's right back in the danger zone again. So it's not cut and dry yet, but as long as he keeps up his consistency, it's going to be very hard for Rossi, Dixon, and who's behind him, I think, to chase him down. But it's not, I would say, to a point where it's in the bank just yet.
Well, your top 10 is Newgarden, Rossi, Patty John, Dixon, Will Power, Ryan Hunter-Ray, Soto, Graham Rahal, Felix, and James Hinchcliffe. Those are all your top 10s. And the gap between Rossi and Dixon is pretty significant. So, yeah, I think you're right. So let's break down last week's race there in Columbus, Ohio. What a race it was. I mean, we really did. And Mid-Ohio has historically not been the most exciting track, but over the last 2 or 3 years has really given us a good race. And, you thought they're coming into the last 20 laps. Okay, we're going to roll into a snooze fest, if you will, but that's not what happened at all. Not even close. We had probably, in my opinion, and I said this earlier, both in NASCAR and IndyCar, in my opinion, we probably saw the most exciting finishes we've seen all year, if not in a long time, there with IndyCar. IndyCar, Ohio, obviously Felix and Scott Dixon, 2 Chip Ganassi teammates going at it, and I mean they went at it. And there for a moment you thought that maybe Scott Dixon was going to open that door for Felix to make a pass, but it didn't happen. And Dixon said, I'm just going to hold on to this and win it. And win it he did. Great win for the 1-2 for the Chip. But I tell you what an exciting race it was there in Columbus.
Competitive race, certainly. I mean, you had multiple drivers that had a chance at it. It's just the way the yellows played out. I think that was going to influence the result. But good drive for Dixon, got the win, always consistent, trying to find the winner's circle. And like you said, I think Rosenquist's first victory is just a matter of time. I think there's plenty of chances left with the road courses left. I think he is the more technical of the 2 drivers on that team. And I would not be surprised if he claims a victory before the season's out. But like you said, at this point, it's looking good for Newgarden. I think Rossi is the only guy I think right now that realistically has a chance to snatch the title away from him. Those are the 2 most consistent drivers and the most competitive drivers, I think, across the board, as opposed to certain drivers like the Carpenter team and some of the other teams that are good, like maybe 1 track or 2. These teams are consistent at every track on the circuit, and that's the difference in why they're challenging for the championship and not running mid-pack or lower in the points like some of these other teams that are, one-hit wonders on the slate.
Well, absolutely. I agree with you about Felix. And I heard in an interview earlier this week that basically when it was brought to the attention of Scott Dixon about bringing Felix on the team, he's like, don't look anywhere else. That's your guy. And so Scott Dixon knows how good of a driver that Felix is, and so we'll see what happens. Hey, real quickly here, because at 9:30 we got to dump in here to the NFL talk, but let's talk a little NASCAR. Steve's down in Florida. He's not able to join us. Tyson's not able to join us. So we're going to have you do the double hat here today for a little bit of NASCAR for a few minutes. But again, let's go back to the NASCAR race last week. Denny Hamlin, Eric Jones, both teammates battling it out. What a great race that was. And we got a little bit longer to go in NASCAR than we do with IndyCar. Of course, NASCAR rolls into Indianapolis here at the first part of September, the weekend after Labor Day. We'll be down there as well for the NASCAR race. But last week's race, what are your thoughts there with Denny Hamlin and Eric Jones battling it out to the finish?
Well, a good day for the Joe Gibbs team. I think tough luck, obviously, for Kyle Busch. Had things worked out with the strategy, I think he would have been right up there as well. And same with Martin Truex Jr. Gibbs is right now the team to be at this point. And that's been the story, I think, for a majority of the season. I think you look at some of these other teams, Penske just doesn't have the consistency with the Ford. And Hendrick, they took the gamble with the new crop of drivers, and it has not worked out for them. I mean, the Chevy is competitive. It's just I think the level of the drivers that they're used to having is just not the same as to what they currently have, and they put a lot of pressure on guys like Chase Elliott, William Byron, and Alex Bowman to get the job done. They have not stepped up to the plate yet for them in the way I think they were expecting that they were going to do. And you look at the scenarios right now, I'd say just like it is in IndyCar, I think there is one group of rabbits out there with the Joe Gibbs Toyotas and a bunch of teams trying to knock them off, and I just don't think they have the resources to knock them off at this point.
I tell you what, NASCAR rolls into Watkins Glen this weekend. One of my favorite tracks to watch races at, and it's going to be an exciting race. Xfinity race rolls off today at 3 o'clock there at the Glen. What are your thoughts?
I think if you're going to have a chance for a first-time winner, I'd say it's this weekend, and I'd say right now, depending on how he fares, Daniel Suarez with his open-wheel experience in Mexico, if you're looking for a first-time winner, possibly a ring or to steal one, he would be the guy that I would pick.
The Monster Energy Series tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the Glen. What are your thoughts?
Like I said, Suarez is one pick. If you're looking for another surprise, obviously Ryan Preece had a good run in the Xfinity race at the Glen last year. So if you're looking for, a guy that's off the board, an off-the-board pick instead of one of the favorites, I'd say watch out for Suarez and watch out for Preece. But I think the guy to beat, based on what I've seen, is either Kyle Busch or Martin Truex.
Well, we're going to roll on into NFL talk here, but we are just getting ready to start some some college football talk. College football coaches poll. The preseason polls came out. We'll talk about, because it's right there in your neck of the woods, and you guys cover Notre Dame. Rick Riggin is turning 40 today. He's a man. He's 40. He's down in Nashville. So we'll be bringing back college football here very, very soon on a weekly basis. Obviously, Rick Riggin is going to be one of our big college football contributors at Notre Dame, blogger as well. Let's talk about Notre Dame. Here we go again. It seems like Notre Dame has a schedule that's in their favor. I know haters will be haters. I like Notre Dame. Don't get me wrong. I'm an IU guy, big-time IU guy, big-time Big Ten guy. But you got to like Notre Dame for what they've done. But every year it just seems like the football gods shine down on Notre Dame. And when you look at their schedule this year, and you look at the bye weeks of the people they're playing, it just seems like, here we go again. God loves Notre Dame. Maybe because it's a Catholic school, I don't know. But let's give us a preview of Notre Dame football. Go ahead.
I do not think they're going to be a college playoff team, because you got the game at Georgia and you got the game at Michigan. Those are games, I say, where it's 50-50 whether they win or lose those games. And then also the fact that 7 of their 12 opponents come into those games off of a bye, where they will be fresh and ready to go. I think it's going to be much more of a struggle for Notre Dame than I think people think it will be. And I would be thoroughly shocked if they get in the college football playoff for the second straight year.
Go ahead and give us the Matthew Embury official. I know you do your power ranking for racing. You don't necessarily do it for college football. But let's get the Matthew Embury peak into the 2019 season, and we'll certainly have you on and talk college football as we always do every year. But let's give us the Matthew Embury power look, if you will, into 2019 college football.
I think playoff-wise, I think you have Alabama and Clemson obviously getting 2 of the spots, maybe Georgia getting a 3rd, and then I guess I'd have to toss a coin and say Ohio State maybe gets the 4th one, or just over Michigan.
What are our thoughts about Ohio State this year? I'm just that guy that just loves to hate Ohio State, and because they're Ohio State and I'm in Big Ten country and I'm an IU guy, and we just can't find ourselves to find anything positive about Ohio State. But what are our thoughts about Ohio State? Are they legit this year, or are they just another Ohio State team that just because they have the name of Ohio State Buckeyes that they get favoritism?
Question is the quarterback they brought in, is he going to be competitive? I think beyond that, though, their defense is going to be really tough to score on. And they got a good running game, I think, as well. But I think the question is, the quarterback they brought in, is he going to be effective or not? That's going to be, I think, the big question as to how good this team could be.
Who do you think is some of the most overrated college teams going into 2019?
Sadly, I got to say Notre Dame's one of them. Like I said, they lost so much on defense